everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into today's Author Talk series brought to you by the Library Speakers Consortium. The Library Speakers Consortium, if I can speak, is a partnership of more than 500 library systems across the US, Canada, and New Zealand with the goal of making Author Talks more accessible to communities of all sizes. I am Brandon Adler, your host and moderator in conversation with each of the acclaimed authors and presenters that you will hear from throughout our series. Today, we are so honored to have award-winning author Amanda Peters with us to chat about her life as a writer and about her best-selling book, The Berry Pickers. I know everyone's ready to get started, and so am I, but before we begin, I need to give you all that standard housekeeping information that keeps everything running smoothly. We have compiled some questions that were pre-submitted with registration, so thank you for doing that. But you may also, and we encourage you to do so, continue to submit questions throughout the live event by clicking the questions button that's just below the live stream video. Or if you've changed views for any reason, then it might be on the side of the live stream video. Keep in mind, there are a lot of you tuning in today, so we will get to as many questions as time allows. And don't worry, if you have to leave early for any reason whatsoever, all registrants will receive a link to the recording in about 24 hours. Now to formally introduce our guest for today. Amanda Peters is a mixed-race woman of Mi'kmaq and European ancestry, born and raised in the Annapolis Valley, Nova Scotia. Amanda's first novel, The Berry Pickers, was a finalist for the Atwood Gibson Writers Trust Fiction Prize in Canada and won the Barnes & Noble Discover Prize and the Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction in the US. The Berry Pickers won the Dartmouth Book Award and the Crime Writers of Canada First Crime Novel Award and has been translated into 16 languages around the world. Her most recent book of short fiction, Waiting for the Long Night Moon, was published in August 2024 to critical acclaim. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're so happy to have you here. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm just going to warn everybody that there may be a sheepdog appearing on screen, so I apologize in advance.
We are fans of all pets around here, so the more the merrier.
Perfect.
Okay, so The Berry Pickers. I know that for The Berry Pickers has been out for quite a while, but looking at some of the pre-submitted questions, I can tell that some of our viewers haven't read the book yet. Can you give just a quick summary of The Berry Pickers for us?
Ooh, without spoilers. Okay, I will try. So basically, the story follows, well, I'll tell you, a Mi'kmaq family goes to the berry fields of Maine to pick berries every summer. And they're there one year, and their young daughter, who's 4, goes missing from the berry fields. So the book then follows the story of her brother Joe, who is the closest to her, and his life trajectory. And then it follows a girl named Norma, who's raised by an affluent white family in Maine, and the trajectory of her life. And I'll leave it there so that I don't have to.
Sure. Yes. And I will say that there might be slight, very small spoilers during this conversation. Yeah. It's not going to be anything that gives the whole storyline, though. So I don't want anybody to worry about that. But there are some really great questions that will get to kind of character development in the heart of the plot and themes and things like that. That might give you some slight spoilers. Okay, so I'm going to start with Jeff's question. Jeff from San Anselmo Public Library says, I loved this book. From the devotion and erasure of one's heritage to the ultimate reunion filled with love, longing, grief, and loss. What are the origins of this inspirational story?
I love telling this story, actually. So my dad was a Mi'kmaq berry picker in the fields of Maine in the 1960s and early 1970s. And he was young then, and he would go down with his family. However many kids were home at the time, there was 14 of them, so you just never knew who was going to be around. And they would just load up the truck and they go to the berry fields of Maine and they pick berries for the month of August, a little bit into September. And he's just always told really amazing stories from that time, like since I was little, the exact same stories over and over again. But really lovely stories. And most of them are really funny. There's some that aren't so funny, but most of them are really funny. My dad's a funny guy. So he said, when I started writing, you should write about us. And I tried to tell him that I wrote fiction, not nonfiction. So I said, no, Dad, I use my imagination. I make things up. But he was convinced. So he took me to the Maine berry fields Him and I went for a weekend. It's only 6 hours away, so
Okay.
we wandered down there. And he just was telling me all these stories, but it was very different reality because I'm seeing where the stories happened. So it's just really different. And while we were down there, I think the second or third day, the first line, the day that Ruthie went missing, the black fly seemed to be especially hungry.
Mhm.
That came to me while we're down there. And I was like, oh, maybe there is a story. Maybe there's a story here. So to his credit, he's never said I told you so. So good. But that's where the inspiration comes from.
So with that line, then your writing process, how do you kind of, did you write that down immediately somewhere so that it stuck with you and like you started working a story around that?
Yeah, as everybody does in the modern times, stuck it in my phone to my notes app.
Mhm.
Um, so stuck it in there, and then I wrote what I thought was a short story. For 2 years, I was convinced it was a short story.
Oh, okay.
But anybody who read it kept saying, "No, this is a novel. You just got to keep going." And I said, "No, it's a short story. I can't write a novel. That's too hard." So after a while, I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe this is a novel." So then I outlined it. I always outline everything, and then I never stick to my outline. So I outlined a novel, and then I just started writing. And I was at the time I was attending the Institute for American Indian Arts in Santa
Mm.
Fe, New Mexico. So I used that opportunity to work with some really great mentors and my classmates to create a really good story for the first like 100 pages or so, and then I was left on my own after that. But yeah,
Well, I think you did pretty well on your own.
a lot of people went into making this story good. So
And so was before you graduated with your MFA, then did you know that it was a novel, or were you still like submitting your thesis with the short story
no,
track?
it was a novel. Yeah,
Okay.
it was going to be a novel then. Yeah, I was about 3/4 of the way finished it by then.
Hmm.
But yeah, I knew. I was like, okay, this is a novel.
So what did you add then? What were the POVs the same? Was it still Joe and Ruthie?
No, because when I first started out in my head, it was only Joe's story. Ruthie didn't have
Ah.
a story. She was there in the beginning, and then she came back in the end. But about 3 or 4 chapters into Joe, I just had this nagging voice in my head. So I was like, okay, let's see what happens if I sit down in front of a blank screen and see if Ruthie has a voice. And turns out she did. So that's why I say I outline and then I just chuck it out the window because it never turns out the way I imagined it in my head in the first place.
We have a lot of questions about kind of like your journey to becoming a writer. And Meredith from Urbandale Public Library says, "Who inspired you to want to write books and otherwise? And at what age did you start to write your first book, or what age really stuck with you that you're like, okay, this is what I want to do?"
So I was 5.
Okay.
And I wrote a book. I thought this was myth for a long time. I thought that was family lore. I wrote a book called Amanda's Book of Faces for Grampy. Is what it was called. And my
Aw.
grandmother put yarn around it, made it into a little book. And I thought she had made this up. I thought she just told me this for years. But she passed a couple of years ago, and I had an old Rubbermaid box from when I lived with her down in my basement. And guess what was in the bottom of the Rubbermaid box?
Oh no, you got to see it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was there, and I was like, okay. So I've always wanted to be a writer. I tell people I have a short story I wrote when I was 21 it will not solidify in my head. So every once in a while I pull it out and try to work on it.
Hmm.
But I was always told again in like high school that, oh, you can't be a writer, right? You'll never make any money. You'll be poor. That was the 90s, right? Telling you can't do art. So I did everything I was supposed to. Went and got a whole bunch of degrees, got a good job, and then I decided I really want to do this now. So I took courses. I
Mhm.
took a certificate in creative writing from the University of Toronto. And then when the opportunity to go to the Institute for American Indian Arts came up, I attended. So yeah, and I kind of found my place in the world there.
So I wonder, you said the story was inspired by your father.
Hmm.
What inspired then for you to make that story your thesis as opposed to some other stories you were working on?
I just thought that one was the best one I had. It was the
Okay.
one I was most proud of at the time, and it's the one I used with my application. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do
Oh,
this.
okay.
And by the time I got there, I kind of figured out what everybody had been telling me, that it was probably a novel. But I was like, okay, so if anybody's going to help me, this is going to help me. I'll have deadlines. I'll have people to assist me. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I decided this is what I'm going to work on.
Mhm. That's fantastic. So Helen from LA County Library says, I loved your book. My question is, did you base your story on a real Mi'kmaq family? The family is so understanding of each other's needs for independence, so unlike Norma's adoptive clinging family. So what was your intention, or was it an accidental juxtaposition? It seems there is danger, great suffering, and very little joy in both options. Can you talk about your intention?
It was accidental, I guess. As an English professor, it's kind of weird when I tell my students. Some writers just write to tell a good story, right? They're not deliberately thinking about this and that. They just want to tell a story, and by virtue of their life experiences, some of this other stuff comes out, right? The themes that are present and stuff like that. So I think that just happened naturally. I didn't set out and intend to do that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there was a second part of that question that I forgot.
Oh, yeah. My question is, did you base your story on a real Mi'kmaq family?
No, it's inspired by my dad's family and the stories. None of the stories made it into the book, but it's inspired by them. So it's not based on a real story. It's inspired. Although if you ask one of my aunties, she thinks she's in it. So,
well, everybody gets their own interpretation of the truth out there in the world.
Yeah, you're right.
So you've mentioned a couple of times now that like your dad used to tell you all of these stories, and then you just said none of which are actually in there. So
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Catherine's question. Catherine says, you mentioned in the acknowledgments that the book was inspired by the stories that your family told you. Are you willing to share some of those stories?
Oh, sure. Sure. I don't mind. It didn't make it into it. So apparently, because they were kids, and there's anybody who's from Maine, if anybody's from Maine on the call, there's the airline route, Route 9 through Maine. And my grandmother wanted to keep all the kids in camp. So she used to tell them there was a woman called the Hatchet Woman who walked down Route 9 with a hatchet and would go after little kids so that they would stay in camp so they wouldn't go near the road. And I was just like, that's traumatizing and brilliant at the same time. So, but they all laugh at it now, but they would not go near the road, and they stayed in camp. So I guess Nan had something going for her there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how you could have even worked that into the book.
Yes, it didn't really work. There's another story about the supply store. The owner of the supply store had a monkey, like a pet monkey, and one day it like jumped on my uncle's shoulders and freaked him out, and he started running down the street with his monkey on his head, and I'm like, and I'd like to believe that that's not true, but I know it is.
So Claudia from Bethlehem Public Library is wondering if any of the characters are based on real people that you know, or even the events that took place in the book.
No, not real people. I say they're not real people I know, but if you take Joe was my grandpa's name, and I just did it to honor him, right? And his contributions to my life and the family. And then when I was naming the characters of Cora and Leah, in my head I was like, what do they look like? And I was like, oh, that looks like Leah from high school, and that one looks like Cora from high school. So I put them in as placeholders, and then I just left them. So their personalities are nothing like, and their histories and their stories are nothing like Cora and Leah. But in my head, that's who they looked like. That's what I could do. Mm-hmm. So aside from that, no, they're not real people. Some of the events are real, like the protest movement in Boston. That stuff was happening at the time with the American Indian movement down there, and a lot of Mi'kmaq call Boston home. There's this direct line from Boston to Atlantic Canada for the Mi'kmaq. So there's a huge population of Mi'kmaq down there, and there was then too.
Okay. Are Cora and Leah from high school people that you still talk to?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And they thought, what? So it was kind of fun, though.
Lisa from Long Beach Public Library is saying there are many books about, quote, passing as white and assimilating intentionally into another culture. Ruthie's journey is such an interesting and sad twist. An unknowing passing and loss of one's birth culture. How did you come up with that idea? And what do you hope readers take away from the exploration of Ruthie's plight?
Oh, wow.
That might be hard to answer.
Yeah, these are intense questions.
Yeah.
It could be on the spot.
It's a little early for that. No.
It's almost bedtime here for me. So I think, and this is weird to say, but I think I put some of my own insecurities into poor Norma. as a
Okay.
character. My mother is not Indigenous. My mother is of settler ancestry here in Nova Scotia. Actually, my grandmother was from Salem, Massachusetts. So I pass quite easily as non-Indigenous. So, and I've long thought about that and how that impacts me and how I move through the world. And I
Mhm.
think I kind of put a little bit of my insecurities about my identity into the book itself. So, I always say writing is like therapy, so I guess that's exactly what I did. But the writing of the book helped me come to grips with who I am as a person. So
Yeah.
I really appreciated that process.
We did have a couple of questions. I'm trying to scroll through this now, but I remember them coming through about whether or not you felt like your own struggles, if you had your own struggles with identity, how did you think that that impacted your writing?
Yeah, and I think that's my editor says it's probably what I'm going to write about for the rest of my life, because
Mhm.
it does impact. So just because I wasn't raised on a reserve, I'm just learning my language now, which is very difficult for me. So I don't know a lot of it. I wasn't comfortable like in ceremony my whole life. I am now, but again, it's the product of writing this book
Yeah.
and becoming more comfortable in my own skin. So I think a lot of my internal insecurities around that kind of came out in the writing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You're pouring yourself into the page, even if you don't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't realize it until after it was all over and some people started talking about it. I'm like, "Oh, no. What did I do?" I think it all turned out well in the end.
It did. Yeah. Susan from Yonkers Public Library says, could you please say more about the importance of the tie or connection that Joe feels to the woman in the, oh, this is interesting, in the artfully painted house that he first observed from the road, then drove across the country to meet again for a cup of tea in her kitchen one afternoon. And I think I want to add, it's interesting that we never get her name.
No. I do that much to the chagrin of my editors. Sometimes I have a really hard time naming people, and sometimes I just don't on purpose. I didn't want to name her. Hers was on purpose. I didn't want to name her. I just wanted her to be someone from outside his family, right? His family all know him, and they've experienced these things along with him. So I wanted someone outside of that to tell him that he was a good person, to tell him that people make mistakes. So I wanted that to be the way it was. And I was kind of inspired by Maud Lewis, to be honest. So Maud Lewis is a Nova Scotia folk artist, she passed away 40, 50 years ago. And she painted her house. She painted her entire house in these beautiful colors and flowers and scenery from the area from where she was from. So the house, that's what I had in mind was Maud's house when I was doing that. And the idea that there has to be somebody from outside because everybody else knows him too well and knows the situation too well and has
Mhm.
all these preconceived notions. So this person has to be there to say, we all make mistakes. You need to move on. You need to make this right. You need to move on. So I think that's why I did it.
Yeah, I love that. I thought it was a great touch point for Joe throughout the book and his different moments of self-realization.
Yeah, and he needed someone aside from his family who were just going. May was just going to blatantly tell him the truth and tell him to get over it, but he needed someone outside of it and kind enough to just say that.
Hmm. So Joe, the story is told from Joe's point of view and Norma's point of view,
Mhm.
um, and it's really interesting. The so the title of this talk is search for truth and the persistence of love across time.
Mhm.
So of course the
That from People magazine.
maybe something similar. I don't know, maybe a paraphrase. Um, but so truth and love are, of course, key themes throughout the book. There are the lies that are overtly told to the characters, which we primarily see as Joe and Norma,
Yeah.
by other people, the lies told by other people. But then there are also the lies that the characters tell themselves
Mhm.
that negatively manifest through guilt or alcoholism or avoidance.
Yeah.
And I know earlier you said that you don't always do things intentionally, but did you intentionally construct this parallel thread of truth and lies within the plot line and simultaneously within the characters?
No, wasn't intentional. It was a product. And like again, I said a lot of these things are products of I worked in First Nations communities, my own community for 8 years, First
Yeah.
Nations communities and health policy. I've sat with residential school survivors and I've heard their stories. And I think all of that kind of influenced the way I wrote it.
Mhm.
And there's always going to be that, and any human's experience in life, there's going to be truth and there's going to be lies, right? So I think everybody can relate to that.
Yeah,
Make sense?
absolutely. Yeah.
But it wasn't intentional. I'm not that smart.
I don't believe that. Kay wants to know, what was your biggest challenge in the writing process for this book?
Oh, biggest challenge. Probably time. So I was working full time here in Canada for a national organization, and I was going into First Nations communities and helping establish financial management systems. I was doing my MFA at the same time, and I was writing this book. So it was. I think time to just sit down and write was a big issue, and
Mhm.
then just making sure in my head that I felt that I had the right to tell a story such as this one. So, with a lot of my stories, I took them to a friend of mine who is like an elder in training. He won't call himself an elder, so I call him an elder in training. And he actually said to me that I know you're not comfortable at the ceremonies and stuff, but this is your ceremony. This is how you are Mi'kmaq. This is how you bring something to the community. So that really meant a lot to me. Sorry, the dog is trying to get her chewy toy. Just will not let me have the moment. Yeah, I think that. And now here's a squeaking. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's really fine.
So now I've forgotten the train of thought.
The elder in training.
Yeah, so he said that to me. So then, of course, then I felt it's not that he gave me permission to write the story. That's not what I'm saying. Like, no one gives me permission. I'll do my own thing. But I just felt more comfortable in the fact that I had told a good story that other Mi'kmaq people could relate to. And I don't know if all Mi'kmaq people do, but the very first time I had a book club with a women's book club from Eskasoni. And when I say that, Mi'kmaq people are like, ooh, how'd that go? Because these women will tell you, right? They will tell you. And it's a good thing. Honesty is good. And they said, we can see ourselves in this. We can see our family in this. Did you know my parents were berry pickers, or I went down to the fields of Maine?
Mm.
And they liked the story and appreciated the story. So then I felt a little bit more comfortable in the fact that I had the right to tell this story. And I always did. It was just my own insecurities.
Sure. Yeah, that's understandable. Do you feel like you're becoming a steward of these kinds of stories? Like, have people been telling you their own like historical stories about these
Yeah,
things?
everybody I meet. I have a story from the berry fields. So, so some people email them to me. I'm sorry about the squeaky noise. People email them to me. People tell them to me when they see me. They tell them to my dad now when they see him, because my dad's a member of the Sante Maiomi, which is the Mi'kmaq Grand Council. So he meets with a lot of elders and knowledge keepers, and they're like, "Oh, your daughter's the one who wrote that book. I have a story about the berry pickers." So they tell him the stories too. So it'd be nice, I think, someday for me to collect the real stories, like start collecting some of those. If I ever have like 5 minutes, I will do exactly that.
Your father has no idea the path he set you upon.
He did not, and he's very proud of me. And he comes with me. I have to tell the story in a full story moment. My American launch was in Portland, Maine. So 4 years after Dad and I had gone down to Maine, and the story came to me, we went down again and we followed the same route. And he came with me to that launch in Portland. Mm-hmm. And when I was done my thing on stage with the moderator, everybody wanted to talk to my dad. They wanted to hear some of the real stories. And he was just so chuffed. He was so happy about that and a little bit overwhelmed, but excited. And he just chatted away. So, yeah, it's really nice. And I took him to like the Atwood Gibson Awards, the Writers' Trust Awards. He came with me there to Toronto, and we had a great time. So, yeah, it's good to inspire by him. So he gets to take part in something.
Yeah, he gets his own moment. I love that. So you were talking, you mentioned the first book club that you had with, I didn't catch the name, but the women who are very honest.
Eskasoni First Nation.
Eskasoni First Nation.
Yeah.
So Michelle is saying, speaking of honesty, Michelle is saying, do you see revisiting the character of May? She seems so down to earth. And so can you talk a little bit about May and who she is in the story? And then do you see yourself revisiting that character?
I get asked this a lot.
Oh, okay.
And, like, everybody really wants to know May's story. They want to talk about May. And so my aunt, who thinks she's a character, I did base her a little bit. She's very honest, and she will go to the ends of the earth for her family. Right. she's a little bit more bold than May sometimes. Oh my goodness, this animal. So I didn't really base her on her, but a little bit I did. And everybody says, are you going to write May's story? Some people want to know the parents' story before the Berry Pickers. I've had that one. Or some people want me to do another one and see how Norma's life turns out, how Ruthie's life turns out. But in my head, the Berry Pickers is done. Like, that story has been put to rest. That doesn't mean, though, that creativity won't take over sometime in like 10 years and something will come. But in my head right now, that story is done.
That last chapter closed it all.
Yeah, in my mind. And I was like, but isn't that the beauty of reading, though? Because you can imagine where those characters go. And like I always say, if a book doesn't let you imagine something, then it's not a really good book. So you can imagine in the future what happens to her. And I think it's a good life.
I think so, too. I mean, that was the end of the book. There were so many firsts for a 50-year-old woman.
Yeah.
It was very joyful.
Thank you. Joyful. I always want people to find the joy in the book, because I know there's a lot of heartache and there's a lot of not great things that happen to people, but there's also joy. So we got to find the joy. I really want people to find the joy in the book.
Absolutely. Okay. So we've had a lot of people asking about Norma's parents. So Laura says, how did you decide to make the dad of Norma a judge? The judge and the sister June, this is kind of a spoiler, but we've been using the names Norma and Ruthie interchangeably. So I think it's okay to say that Norma ends up being Ruthie. So the judge and the sister June went along with Norma's mom when she took Ruthie. How did that evolve when both the judge and the sister should have come forward? And we did have a very similar question, several of them in the pre-submitted questions as well.
Yeah, and I also, this one is quite a common question as well. Yeah. And now my animals are fighting behind my chair.
It's their show. It's their show.
I don't know what's gotten into them. It's probably because I was away all day teaching, and now they're yeah. So I made him a judge long before I knew kind of what was going to happen. I just needed them to be upper middle class kind of thing. So I was like, let's make him a judge. I am so sorry. So, and then of course, when it came to like explaining things, it's like, oh, this is kind of convenient for me, like, because he can doctor letter, like a birth certificate and stuff. He'd have no problem with that. But ultimately, I think the reason why they went along with everything is because they did it for love. Like, Lenore was struggling, right? She was struggling with mental health after having so many miscarriages, and they loved her. And I think sometimes we can convince ourselves of anything for the people, to do anything for the people we love. I think this is an extreme example of it, but I think, and June said, you were there a month before I even knew about you. And I didn't know, I didn't know what to do. And she loved her sister, and she's seen that this was possibly some way to help her out. And just, I mean, we can convince ourselves, yeah, the child was abandoned. I did her a favor, right?
Yeah. For
the love of somebody, maybe you can do that. I don't know. I couldn't do that. And I told my sisters I would never cover for you, but but you don't know. Love is a very powerful, powerful tool.
You really, I think what you did really well in any inkling that you can make Lenore relatable is that you really captured the pain and sadness of losing multiple children, which made the action still abhorrent, but believable.
Yeah. That was the one part that I did a lot of research on, because I've never experienced pregnancy loss. So I wanted to make sure I was honoring women who had. So I read a lot of first-hand accounts online to make sure that I honored that situation, because it's not something that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, I think that you did really honor that, and you captured it. I mean, just the way that you wrote about it when you were introducing that her mother had all of these miscarriages brought tears to my eyes, because I have been through that. So I thought it was wonderfully done.
Thank you.
Okay, so Suzanne from Westfield Memorial Library, speaking of, kidnapping and all that kind of stuff, wants to know, which character was the most unethical in your opinion?
Oh, Lenore, hands down. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I get a lot of people who say, I hate June. I hate Aunt June. I was
Hmm.
like, how can you hate Aunt June? And she was written,
Yeah,
yeah, she was written as someone who was there for Norma, who was there for her when she needed somebody. This dog who needed somebody. So I was like, how can you hear? But then I understand it too. Like she could have done something, right?
sure.
Um, Ruthie, Norma missed out on this big happy family because of what June didn't do. So I was like, okay, I kind of get it. But also, June and Alice were there for her. She needed somebody when her mother was like her headaches and the guilt trips that she used to play. Like she needed somebody to bring a little bit of joy and happiness and reality to her childhood.
Hmm.
So I don't think June is that bad. And the dad, same, but Lenore definitely. I don't really feel a lot of compassion. I do feel compassion because I wanted people to also understand where she was coming from.
Yeah,
But she is a terrible person.
yeah. Yeah, her compassion kind of ended in the okay, I see where your mental breakdown happened, but you still didn't get to do
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
that. Excuse me. So Marie from North Branford Public Libraries is saying, how do you think Joe's life would have turned out differently if these actions did not happen? It's like his illness was eating away at his guilt. Have you, as a writer, do you explore the what if on the other side of the character? Yeah.
No, I don't because I knew like I don't know why I do this, but I always know how everything's going to end, right?
Okay.
So when I like even the new book that I'm working on now, I wrote the last chapter first. Like I know how things are going to end. So I didn't really go and look to the if because that's not the story I wanted to write.
Yeah.
This is the story I wanted to write. It's more of like I've had people say, "Oh, this is labeled as a mystery, and it's not a mystery." And I was so disappointed. I was like, "It was never intended to be a mystery." I give it away in the very first line of the book. I
Mhm.
said, "But it's intended to be a character study. It's intended to show what can happen when these terrible things are done to people, and what are the most horrible responses that can happen." So, yeah, I think I answered the question.
I think so. Tara from Upper Darby Township and Sellers Memorial Free Public Library says, why do you think it's important to have characters that have such complex backgrounds?
Flawed characters are important because we
Mhm.
are all flawed as people. I
Mhm.
think I hate perfect characters and perfect stories because they're unrealistic, right? We all have our flaws.
Yeah.
Maybe these characters have a little bit more flaws, but you think about what has been impacting them, the colonial system that has been oppressing them for generations, and so they're going to have these flaws which seem very much more exacerbated because of the systems under which they exist in. But also you can relate to flawed characters. I can relate to flawed characters, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I myself am a flawed character. So I think I just wanted them to be that way. They're never intended to be perfect human beings because that's not as that's more fantasy than anything.
Mhm. Do their backgrounds evolve as you're writing, or do you map it out before you start writing the character?
Sometimes I map it out, and then again, creativity will take over when creativity wants to do what it wants to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll be like writing, I'm like, oh, that was unexpected. So I do try to map it out as best I can, but again, I just let the story go where the story goes when the inspiration strikes.
Hmm. We there was a question earlier about, oh yeah, Amanda from North Castle Public Library. How do you keep writing even when you feel uninspired? So the opposite of that, when the inspiration strikes, it strikes. What about when it's not striking?
I go do something else. I'll say to my sister, I'm very close to my sister. I'll text them like, "Oh, I just run out of gas," and I'll go cook something. I'm really into cooking soups and stews right now for some reason.
Well, it's getting chilly.
I don't cook normally, but I'm like, I'm gonna make this fajita mushroom stew thing. So I'll go do something else. I do crafts. I'll go for a walk. I'll go visit family. I'll do something else until it comes back to me, which usually happens about 3 o'clock in the morning
Of
or in
course.
the shower. So I will repeat it to myself until I get to the shower. So, yeah, I just walk away from it, and I've never really had writer's block. Sometimes I write through it, and then I end up deleting like 5 or 6 pages of stuff that I wrote that's absolute nonsense. But then it weaves me back into the process.
Mhm. Okay, that makes sense. Um, so, timeline question from Chip at Forbes Library. Chip says, how did you learn to so masterfully control narrative time, seamlessly transitioning from past to present to future and everything in between in both the larger range of the novel, The Berry Pickers, and smaller time frames in some of the short stories? Just brilliantly constructed.
Chip, I'm going to text you later for asking me a hard question. Chip is, if it's the same Chip, he was one of my mentors when writing the
okay.
So, people ask me this too. Like they say, you weave through time really well, and I was like, oh, I don't know how I do that. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, that needs a better transition because people are not going to understand it, and I'll actively work towards it. But I just try to make sure that when I read, I want to make sure I'm there, right? So I'll actively put transitions in to make sure that people know that we're moving from. And sometimes it's easy as a page break. I know that's lazy, but sometimes I do that. But I don't know. I'll just have like, sometimes I think in the new novel I'm working on now, like, okay, there needs to be something to instigate a memory, right? Something happens that triggers a memory, and then you can go back and forth in time. But I just write it and hope and pray and keep my fingers crossed that people get it. But there are times when I'll be editing, I'll be reading, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't even know where I am right now. So then those ones I go back and I actively write transitions to make sure that I can get people. Some of my mentors always said, you have to take your reader's hand and guide them through the story. So I want to make sure, and I use that metaphor in my head. I'm like, I have to take their hand, I have to guide them through the story and make sure that I don't lose them.
Mm-hmm. When you were in the editing process with your publisher, what were some of the biggest hurdles you had to get over there?
It was so long, I don't remember. And I'm in the editing process for my new book right now. Like I just had a meeting with her today, so that's on my brain. But I think the one thing that I'm terrible at, and I have to do better every time, is time. At one point, so Ruthie is 2 years younger than Joe, and at one point towards the end of the book, because of timelines, I had her 20 years older than Joe.
Oh.
I wasn't following a lot. So then I had to, in one of my edits, go through and read it and write down every single event that happened and what year it was and how old she was and how old he was, so that I could make it all. And then I had to change some things because I had messed it up. So I'm really bad at not understanding time. I can understand time, and making sure that time flows in the appropriate way. Yeah. So that's this one that I'm writing now also goes back and forth in time. So I sat down. The very first thing I did was write an Excel spreadsheet, because I'm one of those.
Okay.
And I like, this is the year, this is a character, this is how old they are, this is what happens to them. This is and now I still have it. Like, now I've added things to it. So this is the chapter, this is the thing that happens to them, this is the year, this is how old they were. Because otherwise I get it really mixed up. So my editor, she's like always picking up on those. And I still do it. Even when I think I have it perfect, I'm like, ooh, I got it. And then I'll get a note from her. I'm like, so
that's why we have lots of people read it before it's given to everyone else.
Yes.
So Terry from Thousand Oaks Library is saying, can you update us on actual berry pickers? Is this still a job today that the Mi'kmaq are doing?
Yes. So after like the mid 70s and stuff, it kind of dwindled down for the Mi'kmaq. There were some policy changes in Maine, which led the Mi'kmaq not to go down there as much. Now it's predominant like Mexican workers in the berry fields, but there are Mi'kmaq who go down. I know people who, just to keep the tradition alive, will take vacation from their jobs and go down there for 2 weeks and rake berries. And I'm like, that is backbreaking work. And I am allergic to manual labor. But kudos to them for going down and doing that in the summer. But yeah, it's not a lot of Mi'kmaq now, but it used to be like the bigger communities of Escadovich and Escasson and stuff. They would clear out; they'd be empty in the summers. Everybody would be down there picking. But now it's not so much.
Interesting.
But a few do.
Tradition.
Yeah.
Amber from Chesterfield Public Library saying, in the beginning of the book, a school is mentioned where the children attended and could only come home for Christmas. Can you explain more about the inspiration and history around schools like these? Also in the book, the children were taken out of school, but the mother was torn on whether that was the correct decision.
Yeah.
Why was the mother uncertain?
So that's a residential school system. In the US, you called it boarding school. So we have a residential school system here where children were taken from their families at about 5 years of age and put into a system that was meant to kill the Indian in the child. So fully integrate Indigenous children into white society, rip them of their language, their culture, and their families in most cases. So we had one in Nova Scotia. It was called Shubenacadie Residential School, and I know some people who attended there, but they were allowed to go home at Christmas and in the summer. A lot of residential schools, especially out in the western provinces, they were taken at 5 and returned to their families at 16, unable to speak to their families, unable to because they don't speak the same language anymore, and they were fully indoctrinated into the Catholic Church and stuff like that. Yeah, you can see my wiggling because my animals are fighting again. So that was a residential school system in Canada. So the thing is that the mother in the story is very devoutly Catholic. So in the residential schools, it was run predominantly by the Catholic Church with government funding. Some of the United Church, I think it's the same thing in the U.S. The churches were really heavily involved.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. That's why I'm frustrated. So yeah, the kids go and their father takes them out and says, "You're not going back." But she's kind of torn. She goes like, "Well, they give them education and they give them lessons from the Bible and why isn't this a good thing?" But she didn't realize kind of the big picture of what was happening, that they were like, my family doesn't speak the language anymore, like my great grandfather did, my great grandmother, and it's slowly dwindled out because of these situations.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I talk about the school, it's the residential school system here in Canada, which mirrors the boarding school system in the US.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier that you started taking Mi'kmaq language classes again?
I don't take language. We have apps now. There's apps for everything. Okay. So I have a few apps. So I'm trying to learn. Me and my sister for a while, we're trying to do like a Mi'kmaq word of the week, going back and forth. But sometimes life gets in the way of living. So yeah, I'm trying to learn, and I belong to this this group of Mi'kmaq storytellers and knowledge keepers, and we're trying to take our stories back. I'm trying to like suss out real meaning from them. So I love sitting in the circle with them because I think there's only me and one other who don't speak Mi'kmaq, and they all speak Mi'kmaq together, and I love hearing it, and I love listening to it. And I'm like, "Oh, sorry." Well, I'm like, "No, tell me later." I just want to be like immersed in the language because it is a beautiful language, and now I can find like, "Oh, I knew what that word was." So I get really excited when I realize that I understand the word.
Has your book been translated into Mi'kmaq?
No, there's very few people who can translate it that like it's literary fiction. So it's kind of difficult. There are a few who can, but of course they're so overwhelmed because everybody wants things translated now so they can have it. So it would be the dream, absolutely, to have it translated for sure.
That would be incredible.
Right now it's in 23 languages around the world and not Mi'kmaq.
Oh, well then that bio needed to be updated on my end. I'm sorry. I'm missing out on 6 or 7 translations.
I've even lost track time. I keep a record, so Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. Rhonda from Orange County Library System says, "Are there any hidden elements in the Berry Pickers or themes that readers might not notice on their own that you would like to point out to them?"
I don't think so. I think they're pretty obvious. Talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls came out through it because she is a Mi'kmaq girl who is abducted. So I like the fact, I asked my American publisher, I was like, "Why do the Americans like this book so much? I'm perplexed. I'm joyful." And she's like, "I think it's a soft entry into a difficult subject." So talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, like we have had like a whole commission up here. It's still not great, but I think there needs to be more conversation down there about it. And she said to me, it's a soft entry into this very difficult subject. So I was like, okay, if that starts even one conversation among people who aren't even aware that this is going on, then I think that's a great thing.
Absolutely a great thing. Yeah. Joanne from Lee County Library System says, "At what point did this book really come alive for you?"
Ooh, I think once I had Norma's story, once there was a story for Norma, because I was like, if it would have been just Joe's book story, can you imagine how that'd be kind of boring, really, to be honest.
Well, and also it would have been very sad.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It would be very sad and very boring. So when her voice started coming to me, I was like, okay. So I think that's when I got reinvigorated by the story. Sometimes when you're a writer and you're working on something for years and you're just like, okay, I don't want to see this anymore. But then I got reinvigorated. I was like, oh, okay. So, but then I did write all of Joe's and all of Norma's, and then I put them together at the end and made those transitions. So,
Okay.
yeah, because I just wanted to make sure that I had their very voices very distinct and settled. So I think when it really started coming together was when I finally gave her a voice of her own.
That's interesting that you wrote all of Joe's chapters and all of Norma's, and then you wove them together.
I did, yes.
Wow.
I had to, because when I was trying to write like one then the other, then one then the other, I was just like, I couldn't get the voices, right? They were just coming together as one person. They weren't distinct. So I had to spend a lot of time in Norma's head and a lot of time in Joe's head. And then once I had that, and then there was, of course, there was a ton of editing, but then I could put them together. And then there was another chapter added because it wasn't working. So, yeah.
That's why it's so interesting to talk about writing process, because everybody has to process what they're writing, like their creativity, in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so grateful for my editor as well, and all my mentors on this, because when you're writing, you're so in it. And I tell my students this because I do it. I think I've written this on the page, but I haven't. It's very clear in my head, but I haven't put it down there yet. Right? I haven't put it down on the page. And even my editor for this current book, she was like, "You think that character's on the page? He's not. He's not there." I was like, "Oh," and then I reread it. I'm like, "Darn, she's right." So I had to do something about that, right? So because I thought I had in my head fully formed character there on the page, but I hadn't made the translation from my head to the paper.
Yeah. I mean, I do that even in emails. I think an entire sentence that's just not there.
Been there, done that.
Okay, so Iris is asking, what other stories are you feeling drawn to explore?
Right now, I'm really very drawn to the Indigenous stories, whatever they may be. The short story collection is all Indigenous stories. Doesn't mean it'll always be that way. I may stray, but I just love these stories. Some of them are traumatic, but also joy, right? And in my short story collection, I deliberately end the collection on a story full of joy. It's just absolute happiness and joy. And so I kind of want to do a little bit of that. And my editor often says, you need to bring some happiness to these people. I'm like, yes, I do. I'm going to wait for it. But I don't know. Right now I'm drawn to the Indigenous stories that I'm writing. And I think it's really fun that there's so many people in the world. We didn't even know the Mi'kmaq existed. I'm like, yeah, we do. We're here. We're still here. So it's giving like people from Romania know about the Mi'kmaq. How crazy is that? So I love that.
Amazing. That's amazing. You mentioned that you just want to bring joy to the end of your stories. And there are a lot of Indigenous stories and novels out there that are not joyful.
Yes.
So what does it mean to you to end these stories on a joyful tone and note?
Well, I just think I even try to incorporate little bits of joy throughout, because we are very funny people. I'll tell you that. We're funny, we're joyful, we have loving families, and a lot of that is often overlooked because of these stereotypes that exist out there about Indigenous. And yes, Indigenous people write about trauma a lot. Do you know why? Because Indigenous people have been subject to trauma a lot. But that doesn't define who we are as a people entirely, right? There's still joy, there's still happiness, there's still family. We still love each other. So I just want to make sure that sometimes that comes across, that we're not just broken, right? We are healing ourselves, and we're finding joy.
You're regular people.
Yep, regular people.
Regular people.
Regular people. Good, the bad, and the ugly.
Just like the rest of us.
Yeah, exactly. But oftentimes people have these preconceived notions of what Indigenous people are that are not correct. So
yeah, well, and you really confront that in the novel, in The Berry Pickers. You confront and talk about a lot of these stereotypes.
Yes, and I hope that I help dispel some of them.
Absolutely. Allison from Berlin Peck Memorial Library says, what tradition or aspect of Mi'kmaq culture do you treasure the most?
Ooh, oh, that's hard.
Don't say the wrong thing or somebody's going to.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I think it's the gathering. People love to gather and eat together, right? I think that the feasting and making the traditional foods of like moose stew and luskaniken, which is Mi'kmaq bread, and everybody getting together. And even when you're like, oh, I don't want to go to this event, when you get there, you're like, oh, these are my people. This is so good. So, and that's what we do. We gather a lot, right? Even like people with their families are fighting and stuff, people gather. I always say that also, like, we have this tradition called a saladay in Mi'kmaq. So when a person passes, we will have an auction after they pass to help the family pay for the funeral expenses. So what people do is, like, I could like say I donated a signed book, right? Somebody will pay like $600 for it just so the family will have money. It's not worth $600. So we have, like, there's such a generosity about the Mi'kmaq people. Yeah, and often they make way more money than they need for the funeral expenses. So it either goes to the family or the family donates it to a charity or back to the community. And people will like bid like $1,000 for something and then give it to the person who couldn't afford to bid on it, because that's just the way it goes. Just so as long as the family's taken care of. So I think that just this sense of caring for one another is really inspiring when I see it. I mean, we all have. No family is perfect. No community is perfect. We all have our problems. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, there's that care.
I love that. That's also food. Food is such community, and the food and bringing people together, and the community. It makes everybody feel more connected.
It does, yes, especially when everybody's bringing something, and we have like Lusky making contests at the reserve. It's a bread. So everybody, it's the exact same bread, but everybody comes and there's like so much of it, like on tables and tables of it. Everybody just loves it. So yeah.
They don't try to get like creative with it and make like a sweet one or a spicy one.
Some people do. Some people will try not spicy, but some people will put sweet stuff in it. And I'm like, okay. I like to pour stewed blueberries over mine. There's a whole thing whether you put blueberries or molasses on top of them. So that's a whole contentious issue.
Is it thick like a pancake?
It's unleavened, but it comes up a little bit. Yeah, it's a strange bread, but it's delicious.
I like bread.
I love bread.
Okay, so Susan is saying, having attended county fairs growing up in Michigan, I was interested in the horrendous day at the traveling fair that propels Joe into his story. Can you say any more about that device? So yeah, but that's when
Charlie, yeah. It's funny because when I ended that chapter, I was sitting there and I was like tearing up a little bit. I was like, you don't have to do that. You are the creator of this story.
True.
You don't have to do that. But it was just another kind of instance where justice was not done for Indigenous people. So I kind of wanted to show that it was kind of a something that happens quite commonly. Yeah, I still don't know why sometimes I question myself. I'm like, why did you do that? It's so sad, Amanda. But then, of course, and it might have been because I'd heard a story. I had a friend who said his father died in a fight in the berry fields. So, it's not his father, his uncle passed away as a result of a fight when they were down the berry fields in the 70s. So perhaps I had that in the back of my mind because that happened. I'm not really sure.
Well, I mean, it was an effective device to give you more of like that guilt that Joe carries throughout the entire story.
Right, the last person to see Ruthie, the last person to be with Charlie. So it just adds to that overwhelming sense of guilt that he feels.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned a couple of times that you are in editing process for your new book.
Yeah,
and we've had a lot of people asking if you're allowed to tell us what that's about yet.
It's based on one of the short stories in the collection. I can tell you that.
Oh, okay. So everybody run out and get that right now so that you can figure out which one in Waiting for the Long Night Moon
Yes.
is becoming a novel.
Da, da, da.
Denise from Ocean City Free Public Library saying, congratulations on the success of The Berry Pickers. Any idea if this might be made into a movie?
Oh, have you heard the rumors? So I am actually working on a screenplay. I'm co-writing it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, with another Indigenous writer slash actress out of LA. So we are, we think we have maybe a producer is kind of interested. So we're on our like fourth or fifth go through of the screenplay. I think a lot of it was held up because I don't know how to write a screenplay, but they thought I should try it. And I was so dedicated to the content of the novel the way it was that
yeah,
I could, for a while, I couldn't wrap my head around the different medium and how those stories presented. But now that I've wrapped my head around that, I think we're almost there. So we're hoping to have, a completed screenplay in the next couple months for consideration again. And this was like our, I don't know, our third or fourth go around on it. But I think of me trying to understand this story in a different medium.
So once the screenplay is finished, then you try to get it optioned again by a production company. Is that how it is? Okay.
Yeah. I think so. It's all new to me. I'm a girl from the Apostolic Nova Scotia, so I'm like, movies? What? Go to the theater to see. So yeah, I have people, smarter people, way smarter people than me, they're doing that. I just wanted to do the writing part.
I will say I was explaining the plot line to a friend that we have weekly lunch, and she was like, wait, is this going to be a movie? Because this sounds like a movie.
That's what a lot of people say. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed that that works that way. But yeah, it would be different. And I was always the person that said book is better than the movie, right? I was always that person. And then after doing this, I think send it a blanket like apology to all the screenwriters who are adapting novels, because it's hard and it's going to be different. But just as long as the core of the story is there, I'm happy.
Well, and it has to be different because of, like you said, the medium that it's being produced upon. Like it has to be shorter. Things have to get cut because you have to let people use their imagination more, right? Oh, did I freeze?
Oh, you froze.
Uh-oh, am I back?
Oh, you're back.
Okay.
I was like, is it me?
No, I think it was probably me. I should have just not been talking about that. So Ellen is from Montgomery County Library is saying, has the recent rapid growth in audiobook readers changed anything in what or how you write?
It doesn't change how I write. No, not at all.
Okay.
I do love audiobooks as well. Shelby Van Pelt's audiobook, that was so well done. Like
it was so well done. You're right.
So well done. And I was just like, mine, I think they're well done, but I can't listen to them because when I listen to them, I hear all the mistakes that I want to go back and fix.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh no, why did I do that? I think there's a line in the first chapter of The Berry Pickers and it rhymes. Ugh.
I have to go back and look at it now.
And I'm like, what? Amanda, Susan. So yeah. I get kind of like, oh no, I would have changed that now. Like, and so I don't listen to mine, but I love everybody else's. But it doesn't change the way I write the stories. I still write the way I write. Apparently, people call it sparse prose. And that's how I write. That's how I'm comfortable writing. That's how the stories come out. So I'm going to continue to write that way, and hopefully they translate well to audio. I've had mixed reviews. People love the audio or they hate the audio. There seems to be no middle ground there. Yeah.
I loved the audio. I always read both in print and audio because I'm always driving somewhere.
Yeah.
So you'll make the most of your time, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we're at the end of our hour. So I want to ask Martha's question. It's also a question that we close with at the end of every talk, which is, what books are you reading right now? I'm going to change it a little bit, by Indigenous authors that you recommend that everyone run out and check out immediately. You can also give us some non-Indigenous authors too.
Yeah, that's such a hard question. Right now, I did just read Danica Roach, who's a Mi'kmaq novelist as well. So and she's from Glooscap First Nation. Woohoo, represent. So she just wrote a book called The 5 Seasons of Charlie Francis. So I just read that and I absolutely loved it. I got to blurb it, so I was pretty excited about that. I just purchased Brandon Hobson's new one, The Devil is a Southpaw. So I haven't got to read it yet, but I can't read during the school year because I'm reading to teach. So I'm like, I have a little stack that I'm ready for when the holidays come, the Christmas holidays. So that one is really high up on my list. I'm trying to think. I'm one of those people who buys like 5 or 6 books when I go to the bookstores, and they're piling up and taking over my house. For non-Indigenous, I'm teaching right now, Girl, Woman, Other. By Bernadine Evaristo. My students are really connecting to that. So it's not Indigenous, and she's British, but my students are really connecting to it. So I'm really enjoying that. Finally getting them to engage in conversation instead of just staring blankly at me. So I'm really loving that. I usually have a few things on the go. Like I'll have like nonfiction on my Kobo, and then I'll have like a fiction book, and then I'll have a poetry collection. So those, I'm trying to think of ones I've read recently, but again, it's all for school stuff. I'm reading Frankenstein just because one of my students is doing a creative writing thesis, and they're inspired by Frankenstein, so I want to be there and understand what they're thinking. Yeah, there's so much brilliant Indigenous literature out there, like absolute brilliant stuff out there. So I once was on a call with a group from Florida, and they like, we don't have Indigenous literature in America. I'm like, oh my goodness. Call me orange for one. Like you have brilliant Indigenous literature. Louise Erdrich, I mean, wow.
Yes.
But I also love like Michelle Good, and Eden Robinson's Monkey Beach is one of my favorite books of all time. And Katharina Vermette, her new one was called Real Ones. That just came out. It came out last year. And that's about the issue of people pretending to be Indigenous. So there's so many. It's such a hard question. We
spoke to Wabgajik Rice in February.
Oh, yeah. I saw one last weekend. Yep.
And you were his book recommendation.
That's hilarious. I would also recommend Wab, but there's so many that sometimes you forget them.
That's true.
Yeah, I just saw him this weekend actually at the Afterwards Literary Festival here in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's truly been a pleasure to talk to you for the last hour and to read your work. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you, and I apologize for my crazy animals. I'm so sorry. They're very cute in real life. They're just annoying when I talk to somebody besides them. So, thank you. Walalio.
I also want to extend a huge thank you to our viewers for tuning in to our author talk today. Without your support, none of this would be possible, and we thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. As a reminder, if you scroll down below the live stream video, you can see the resources area, which contains a link to Amanda's book, The Berry Pickers. We look forward to everyone joining us next week on November 18th to chat with Charles Duhigg about his book, Super Communicators. Be sure to register for this and lots of other great events on your library's event page. I'm Brandon Adler, and thank you for joining us.